And
We are live, guys, ladies and gentlemen, girls, everybody. This is an improv, what basically means it goes like this. We've been planning this Tasting in Torah Live all day, scheduled for 9:30, and at 9:25, Tzvi decides that he's going to start cooking.
yeah,
Because,
because Israel.
exactly.
Or not.
It's always blame Israel.
Yeah.
It's a good thing that it's hamburgers and not hot dogs, because dogs are a hot topic now when it comes to Israel politics in the New York Times, isn't it? So yeah. So so I said, hey, let's just start our session here. You could get a view into our real life, because after all, what's Tasting in Torah if not two guys drinking wine talking about stuff, right? So that's where we're starting off. So we're going to start off here, and then when Tzvi will benevolently move himself to our pod right there,
Yeah.
we'll finally be able to
Just
continue our conversation.
These buns from the
Oh, he's going full. This guy's like
buns in the oven. You know what I'm saying?
he wasn't kidding.
This is the only bread I can eat because I'm inadvertently gluten free against my own will, so I can eat sourdough spelt. I mean, it's real bread. I can actually say motzi on this, a bracha, but this is sourdough spelt. This is the only bread I can basically digest. Well, I got some burgers here.
What's going on with these fried purple onions, man?
I don't know. I tried to make it like Russian style, but then I don't know what's going on. It's a little.
They had purple onions in Russia.
Not purple. Well,
You're from Ukraine, not from Russia.
it's even worse. It's actually, believe it or not, yeah. I thought there'd be nothing worse in Russia, but it actually is. It's called we just elected a Jewish. Speaking of antisemitism, it's our topic tonight. We just elected a Jewish president in Ukraine.
Who's we?
Well, not we. Ukraine did. I was born in Ukraine, but I'm not there anymore.
Yeah, I mean,
So yeah.
look, my great grandfather is from Ukraine. One of them, anyway. But I wouldn't say I'm Ukrainian.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say we. I'm like, he was Ukrainian.
Do you know what the word Ukraine means in Russian? Ukraina?
Yes. What does it mean?
On the edge. On the edge of Russia. What is the name of your country? On the edge.
Well, the funny thing is that
song.
my great grandfather's name was Kitai Gorodsky, which comes from Kitai, which means
China.
exactly. It was on the road to China, so it was Kitai Gorod.
I have a relative.
Kitai Gorod.
Kitainik. Also Moldova, whatever.
There you go, Moldovan. So yeah.
That's pretty
So here he is. He's using our. He's washing, and we're watching.
The fake golden chalice.
We're watching as he's washing with the golden chalice, so that we can actually get started with his tasting in Torah. While he tastes his buns. Oh mine. Man. I'm gonna spare you the chomping mode. It's called chomping, I think, is what the my students call it. So anyway, sir, are we ready to migrate towards the table?
Yeah.
All right.
You're great, my great.
Let's keep these things.
No.
Sure. Guys, you're watching the transmigration of fried purple Russian onions into a weird spelt Ukrainian bread. That's what's going on here.
It's actually probably made by Germans, but whatever.
The Germans.
It's all good. That's all they're good for now.
Yeah. Dude, those headphones, I can get you those fluffy, you have to stuff
You
them
want to
into
give me
your ear.
fluffy things?
I mean, I got you a bunch of them.
All right.
right.
Well, let's go,
Defluff. All right, here we go, ladies and gentlemen. If you're catching on now, you've been living under a rock and you don't know that this is the pod. This is why we call this a podcast. It's because of the pod.
It's kind of like, they give people a tour of the set when
Exactly. What's called MTV Cribs.
or whatever, yeah. Or like you get like a tour of the
Yeah, exactly.
video
So,
game.
all right,
show or
let's connect this thing. Here we go. And hello, Isaac Cabrusi. Ahlan. You know what? These students, they see me in the hallway and they shout at me, "Hey, Torah Intermedia!" And I'm like, if you would have seen Steve Jobs, would you go, "Hey, Apple"? Or if you'd see what's his name, Bill Gates, you say like, "Hey, Microsoft." No, Macintosh would be Apple, not Apple, Macintosh. Right? So anyway, here we are, and as promised, tasting in Torah, we got our Yogev. This is our Vina. This is our standard Yogev, which, by the way, the word Yogev, well, you tell us about it in a second. The word Yogev sounds like Yokev, Yekev. If you want to know what a Yogev is, this person on the cover is a Yogev. He is, What's going on there?
Oh,
Some noise from our neighbors. Now, the word shows up once in Tanakh. It shows up in the context of Tzom Gedalia, when Nebuchadnezzar destroyed the temple, the first Beit HaMikdash, the first temple, in 586 BCE.
The fast of Gedalia.
The fast of Gedalia is after Tisha B'Av, where we mourn the destruction. It's when he left a bunch of people there to resettle the land, lots of farmers and people who work the vineyard. So they were called Yogvim.
Wait, when
Kormim
is
v'Yogvim.
Tzom Gedalia is before Rosh Hashanah?
You're talking about what date in the year it is. It's the day after Rosh Hashanah. We're talking about what is the event.
The event, okay.
Right, the event itself. That's when it happened.
No.
Okay, now, so I'm going to sit down, and I'm not really sure if you want everybody to be seeing you while you chomp away. You're okay with that? Yeah?
Fine.
Okay. Whoa. The pod. Yeah. Anyway, so let's just try to get an angle, shall we? Oh, you're setting your thing up?
No, I'm just looking at... I'm trying to get more fans, or even for people after to watch.
So, okay, fine. It's all good. So, I'm just trying to get the angle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So who's on over here?
Who's on right now?
Mr. Solomon is on?
No, he's actually not, which is very interesting. He's usually the first one to be on.
Is he the one that made the original graphic?
Yeah.
The graphic for the thing?
Yeah, he's the one. David Salama, he's the one. He asked us not to tag him because it messes up his Grindelwald. Instagram.
I thought he meant it messes up his street cred.
No, not at all. I think this is what gives him his street cred. Anyway, so our topic for today is grab the wine. But we got a very, very contemporary topic. We are on the aftermath of Yom HaShoah and the annual day of commemorating the Holocaust. And by the way, the reason for the date at this time is the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising.
That's right.
And which is really important because the whole concept of Yom HaShoah, when it started at the foundation of the state, was such a negative thing that they look at it as the
people didn't want to.
The myth. It's really a canard. They call it like sheep to the slaughter.
Yeah.
You know what? When you're presented with guns, I mean, you know about the Death March, right? America, Japan. Like everyone does exactly the same thing. That whole sheep to the slaughter thing is really a canard. It's a myth. But the point is that people take that and they say like, we don't want to have anything to do with that. By the way, I can't see you.
Sorry. I'm just trying not to
we really want to see you chomping down.
I'm trying not to leak on myself.
Yes. That's just lovely. So anyway, yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah, I think that's Isaac Kabrusi. Hey, Isaac. Good to see you. It's a good kid. So the idea of the ghetto uprising and why we're commemorating it then, it's sort of to restore the honor of the Jewish people. It's like, yes, we got up and we fought. Of course, the entire thing was a failure. But no, that's really the point. It's that people are focusing now much more on the heroism of the Holocaust, which is fascinating because it comes out this year on the day of Hod Shebegvura. And the idea of Hod Shebegvura, which is the Kabbalistic aspect of this day, without getting into all the the background, the idea of Hod itself is the idea behind awarding a medal of honor for a person who died attempting to do something without actually succeeding.
Interesting. Is that kind of like participation?
No.
Trophies? No, I'm kidding.
No, but seriously, why do we do that? They didn't succeed. They fought for something and they didn't make it.
Maybe, let's say in the case of we recently had the shooting in the Chabad, the woman who was shot, she saved someone's life. She jumped in front of the rabbi, or she jumped in front of whoever it was,
or like medals of honor.
Yeah.
Because the whole idea of the Medal of Honor is that when a person stands up for something, they are externally showing a value. And that external perception of a value being asserted is called Hod. That's what it is, which is why Hoda'ah is all about Hanukkah, which is the Maccabees weren't actually expecting to win, and it wouldn't have mattered to them at all had they lost. The point is that they're standing up for a value. And so it's interesting that it came out on a day which has to do with the outward expression of standing up for asserting a value, which is very much what Gevura is about. Gevura is about asserting boundaries of value, standing up for things and what is not in terms of judgment, etc. So it's a very nice idea that it comes out like that. So Yom HaShoah, but our title was Antisemitism, Holocaust, and the failures of Jewish education. So let's start off with Antisemitism as the lovely title and cover of our collaborative effort that was put into made. Our banner by David Salama putting together the whole thing, and Hananel making that nice little caricature, spoofing off the New York Times. Speak of the devil, David Salama. We were asking the entire time, when is he going to come on the show?
The man of the half hour. I say half hour because we're half hour too late, and so is he. It's fun. It's all good.
It's all good. Well, we're starting right now. We were just giving acknowledgement to David for putting together that wonderful poster. So now, getting started with anti-Semitism. So the first part is really about the anti-Semitism, the obnoxious, I would say, caricature that was found in the New York Times a few days ago, which portrayed a blind President Trump following the walk dog of Bibi Netanyahu. So everybody was in uproar about that, and the New York Times apologized, probably because they were going to lose a lot of readership, and they're pretty much dependent on that at this point.
Even though it was published on New York Times International Edition, which is you can find in like hotels in Mexico and Dominican Republic, you know, like these resorts.
Should I keep talking so you can...
No, it's okay. That's the last time I saw that newspaper, which used to be called New York Times International. Yeah, it was.
So you're saying it's not on the regular New York Times, it's only on the international, or it's on both?
It was only published in the international one, but it's New York Times anyway. It's owned by the New York Times. It's these are New York Times employees. So
okay, so more people are
responsible for this. Yeah.
All right. So the big uproar was, how did the New York Times authorize posting this obnoxious poster, which is clearly anti-Semitic? Now, you did some digging around, and you uncovered some very interesting things about this. Why don't you tell us the process and the story and your conclusion?
So my whole thing is like, I was curious, New York Times published this cartoon. My curiosity is always in these situations, who's the person that drew this? I wanted to know what country he's from, what is his political background, if any, who's this guy? What is his intention with drawing this? It can't just be... we're living in 2019. Why would a person in 2019, I assumed it was a person from the Western world. I didn't, because right now if you go to the Arab world, you see cartoons like this, but it's not a surprise. They'll publish it in Syria and Egypt and in places like Lebanon.
Just so everybody's on the same page, this is the cartoon that we're talking about.
Yeah. Very famous cartoon, been circulating the past couple of days. So, here's our friend. This is I feel like I'm in the
Keep going.
Yeah.
So you look this guy up.
Yeah, so I looked this guy up. I'm like, this guy has to be from Western world, because otherwise this cartoon will not be published in New York Times. I look him up, and I found out that he is a cartoonist. He's actually a very celebrated and famous cartoonist from Portugal. His name is... That's not his.
Okay.
The one you're showing me.
I'm just going to look him up so I can show him.
Yeah. His name is Antonio Moreira Antunes. And he's been doing this since the 70s. He's been making these political cartoons, commentary since the 70s. And I just looked up some of his cartoons, so you could actually show us what we're referring to.
I mean, I haven't found anything that he wrote. I'm just seeing him.
No, I'll show you. Here you have here's one cartoon where he depicts. For example, I'll skip this one for now, but here's one cartoon. He depicts Assad. He's using his own people as ammunition, as bullets. He's mowing down his own people. There's another cartoon with Putin on the psychiatrist's couch. Yeah, and the psychiatrist is Stalin. Stalin is using a rocket for a pencil. A lot of this kind of stuff. A lot of this political commentary. He has one with Merkel, and she's ruining the... I'm sorry.
The euro.
The euro, the currency of the EU. So a lot of this kind of stuff. So I'm looking at... Before I judge this guy on a personal level, I looked at his whole body of work, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, this guy seems to me like a person who just...
He draws political cartoons.
Yeah, he wants to make political statements. So then you look at this other cartoon, where actually J-Post posted it. The one with the heels. Keep going. No, go back.
I had it.
J-Post actually posted this. Jerusalem Post actually posted this cartoon.
No, it's not showing it.
The original search. The original.
Dude,
Yeah. So, there you go. So this cartoon, you could look at it and say, wow, this is anti-Semitic. But then you see, on the other side, you got like the heel of the Muslim guy, and it's a crescent strapped to his heel.
And a bomb.
So like, I'm thinking to myself, this guy's just trying to make a political statement. You can have a conversation about what he's actually saying. You can disagree with him about the politics of it all. That Israel's controlling. That's not his. Israel's controlling, the Jews are controlling this, or Israel's controlling American foreign policy. Let's just keep it at that.
That's what he meant by the spur. Okay, whatever.
Yeah, by the spur, and then these guys are, so and this is causing a religious war basically. So this guy's against. So you come to the conclusion that this guy, you look at his body of work, he's against any kind of religious conflict or any conflict whatsoever. So then I thought to myself, okay, so I'm looking at this cartoon that he just recently made, and maybe he's just making an argument, for maybe, I don't know, America's foreign policy is being led by Israel. Trump is doing what he's doing with the Iran deal, for example, because of Bibi, not because of anything that Trump actually wants to do. Again, it's debatable. The question is, if you are this cartoonist, you want to make just a political statement, right? And you claim that this is not a religious statement, just political, or not an ethnic statement. Why are you putting a kippah on the head of the president and a Star of David around the neck of this, Benjamin Netanyahu dog? As if people don't know, wouldn't be able to tell that this is Benjamin Netanyahu, as if won't people be able to tell that this is Donald Trump. As if Trump wears a kippah all the time. Like you can't tell that it's Trump without a kippah. You know what I mean? So then I thought to myself, this guy's from Portugal, right?
Oh, okay.
How can
so basically it's Europe.
Yeah. So how can he make such a critical, a critical oversight? How can he make such a critical mistake? I'm assuming he knows the historical context of such cartoons. I'm assuming he knows that this cartoon, if it's published, can be construed as something from, I don't know, the Protocols of Zion, something akin to, what they drew in, I don't know, their Sturmer or whatever, or New York Times back in, I don't know when.
Their Sturmer, wow.
I'm saying during the, the Nazis, during World War II. And then I thought to myself, there's something else here. There's something in European society, and it actually harkens back to Catholicism and harkens back to the Christian world. WhatsApp messages notwithstanding. It harkens back to culture, and it's a certain culture in the Christian world. It comes from blood libels, and it's almost an.
See, my students who are listening studied anti-Semitism in Nazi Germany a while ago. We started the year with showing them a caricature from Der Stürmer saying "Out with the Jews," so that the German oak can thrive again. That was the first thing we did in the year. Remember that, David?
When this cartoon was released, they compared it to cartoons from that era, from that.
Yes, Der Stürmer.
So people were shocked. That's why people were so shocked, because how can New York Times do this? But if you look at the history of New York Times is actually notorious for publishing this kind of stuff. Not only that, they're notorious for not publishing accounts of the Holocaust, during the Holocaust.
So, I don't know if it was always the same people on top. It's been 70 years.
The person who's running New York Times, he's basically a family scion of the people who were running it before. This is generations of people.
And nobody's inceptionized him to change his opinions, you're saying?
What do you mean inception? Oh,
like in the movie, when you make the son of the guy,
It's not a case of his opinions. I think at this point, again, it's just a culture. It's a culture of the newspaper, just like it's a culture in Europe to have this mentality. Like this guy, he came on CNN, the cartoonist, 2 days ago or a day ago, and he's like, I don't understand. This is not meant to be anti-Semitic. Da 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 da. Like he doesn't even understand why people perceive it as anti-Semitic.
It's just politics.
Yeah, to him it's just politics. To him it's like, he drew a cartoon in the 80s of actually it's appropriate for today, depicting the famous picture of the Jewish boy holding up his hands.
Yes.
But he turned the tables. He made it like the Lebanese kids in the Lebanon War, and the Israelis are in the position of the Nazis. You see, like on the helmet, you see the Star of David. So he turned the tables, and it was a very controversial cartoon when it came out.
I would pull that up, but it's too. I don't want to.
Yeah, so he says it's a political statement. It's it's like the leftists say, the Israel, we founded the state, we went through the Holocaust, and now the Israeli army is doing the same to the Palestinians. What was done to them. So it's like you can have a conversation about this. The problem is when you make cartoons like this and you don't have any sensitivity for the what's it called, for the historical context, then you're already killing any conversation before it starts, and this is the problem here. So I actually mentioned all these things, and then this guy, he came, I guess yesterday or today, and he said the very thing that I said about him. He said it.
He said it about himself.
I basically nailed it, except the only thing he omitted is the whole thing about, like, he doesn't have any self-awareness. Like he said, I don't understand why it's anti-Semitic. Mm-hmm. Well, listen, it's anti-Semitic because your whole culture there's anti-Semitism embedded in your culture. In the Western European Catholic culture, people don't even know when they're making certain statements.
Didn't you say when you were playing ball and they called you a kike?
Oh, that was in hockey camp when I remember there was Russian kids. There was a Russian kid and we were playing soccer, and this kid, some other kid kicked the ball and he kicked it like kind of, whatever, God knows where, like kind of crooked. And he was saying, like, this kid was like, oh, you're kicking the ball in a Jew, like, po-evreiski. It means like, in a Jewish way. Like a Jew would kick it.
In other words, you kick the ball and as it goes, it makes more money? Like pinball?
It would be like, instead of saying you kick like a girl, you kick like a Jew, basically. So he did this on a few times, and I came up to the kid, I'm like, listen, I actually came up to my coach, I was like, listen, tell the guy, and this coach, he was already in America for a while, so like, he actually wasn't Jewish, he's a Russian speaker, but you're in America and you interact with enough Russian Jews, and you understand that, like, you can't just like, bring that same stuff that you had back in Russia, it's not going to fly here in America, we don't do this anti-Semitism. So I told him, listen, if this kid keeps going on like this with this
he's gonna lose
yakking, he's gonna have a problem. I don't care whose son. He was like the son of a famous hockey player in the Soviet Union. I don't give a crap whose son is it. The Wayne Gretzky, whoever. And then the guy came up to him and he's like, dude, you can't say this. He's like, what? I didn't mean anything by it. He's like, listen, this is like, you can't say that here. He's like, and the kid lived in Sweden or something. He's like, I don't know, you could say that in Sweden, you could say that in Russia, but you can't go on yakking like this. You're gonna have a problem with this guy. So that's what that ended.
Putting into that.
But I realized that, like, even in my culture where I'm from, in Ukraine and in Poland, the word for Jew is Żyd in Polish, right?
Right.
But it was used in a derogatory term in Russia. If you come to somebody in Russia called them Żyd, that's like calling them kike.
I mean, if you go even to the Merriam-Webster dictionary and you look at Jew, to Jew is like to cheat someone.
Yeah, Jew somebody
like
down.
That. Yeah, I'm saying like it has. Okay,
it's
so
context. Yeah.
So we're speaking about anti-Semitism, and it's quite clear that anti-Semitism is on an uprise. It hasn't gone.
No.
And so what do we do about it? Why is it still here? Right?
Why is it still here? It's a very good question.
Yeah. So I just recently saw a video by the ex-chief rabbi of the Commonwealth, Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, who was talking about how anti-Semitism is a mutating virus, and anti-Zionism is just a new form of it, and he sort of analyzes it step by step. But the point is that it's been in part of humanity for as long as there have been Jews, pretty much, and it's not going away.
No.
So it's just mutating. So why is it still there? Which I believe is a question we were discussing before. You wanted to ask me that.
Yeah, I mean, I made a video yesterday talking about like that. It's people keep hearing about people saying, "Oh, we want to stop anti-Semitism. We want to fight anti-Semitism. We want to, And I'm thinking to myself like, and this is religious people saying this, how they don't realize that this is a spiritual issue, and it's a spiritual issue that's internal, and it's actually embedded in halakha.
I mean, I got to tell you that I am a very rationalist person. So when you say it's a spiritual thing, I try to convey that in terms that will make sense to somebody who says, I don't believe in spirituality, and still be able to have a conversation with them. And so you can call it spiritual and just say, like, listen.
By spiritual, I mean Torah-based. It's something that started...
It's not what spiritual means.
It's something that started way in our history of the Jewish people, and it continues today.
So the language I would use is I would say that is something innate.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
It's something that's just part of the world, not that it's spiritual. I'm saying like it's part of the world.
Well, the problem is that when you eventually bring in sources from Kabbalah and Midrash.
Yeah, okay.
Then you
Whatever.
can't escape it.
That's not the point. The point is that it is something innate.
Yeah.
And so
In
you can use anything you want to discuss it. You can call it xenophobia. You can call it ingrained hate of Christianity through Christianity of Jews, Martin Luther and so on. You can talk about all of that, but the bottom and the truth is that before Christianity came onto the scene, Judaism as a religion wasn't really the same thing it is now, but because it sort of defined itself in light of Christianity. But not only that, the Romans didn't really have so much of an issue with it. Like the only issue that they had was that they were rebelling against them. It wasn't like, oh, you were anti-pagan.
Yeah, but Greeks had it.
Yeah, but it wasn't specifically about Jews. It was about people who refused Hellenism.
Well.
And Hellenism in general didn't really click with Judaism because of its exclusive nature. In other words, we say there's one God, and they say, hey, we're willing to accept your one God too as one of our many gods. And we're like, that doesn't really work. But it wasn't anti-Semitism. It was sort of, it wasn't that.
It was ideological differences.
Yeah, it's like, okay, fine.
Philosophical differences.
Yeah. Anyhow.
Yeah.
But to put this in terms which you could say are spiritual, is there's a beautiful play on words that's brought down in the Midrash that says that Mount Sinai is called Sinai because Sin'ah, which means hatred, came down to the world at the revelation at Sinai. Amen. And that's usually understood as follows: until revelation at Sinai, any person, any religion, any nation, any cult can claim whatever they want to claim about the reality of the world and about what's right, what's not, and what the gods want. The moment God reveals himself at Sinai and he says, this is what I want.
Game over.
Exactly. And that upsets everybody very much. Like, who are you to tell us that we are no longer the arbiters of truth? And that's why they hate us. Because we are telling them, actually, you can't make stuff up.
Even today, where people, like, you always hear people, we live in a world where there's so much, like, moral relativism, and you can go to Manhattan, you go to a bar.
You talk to anyone about
sit down with someone, you're like, well, that's my truth. I have my truth. But what's to say that that's what you're saying is right? But what's to say that this, and what's to say that that? And it's like, the conversation's over. Like, I can't talk to anybody.
Who was this mathematician who basically gave up once?
But 2 + 2 is 5.
Once a student told him, well, maybe for you that's a proof.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm telling you, I want to ask people, like, why do you agree that 2 + 2 = 5 at this point? There's no absolute truths in this world. Like,
so at the end of the day, what Sinai represents is there being truth. And by the way, you're not on the screen right now. Do you want to be seen?
Yes, I do. Just for a second.
There you go. All right. So we were speaking about Sinai and anti-Semitism, and even the quote that's celebrated in Yad Vashem about Hitler, saying that the problem with the Jews is that Jewish conscience.
Yeah. Right. And circumcision, which is interesting.
Yeah, but it's all related because it's biologically implementing our conscience on ourselves as something we're committed to. Because the whole idea of circumcision is saying that creation is incomplete. We need to make it beautiful. We need to make it better, right? And that's saying basically we have some idea that we're asserting onto it instead of saying just leave us be.
I just think it's incredible that Hitler caught on to this.
Of course,
it's incredible.
No, the real Nazis definitely.
You understand that these guys were tapped into some. They were tapped into the occult, which is basically, I guess, they were tapped into the Sitra Achar. These guys.
Look,
you know what I'm saying? They're always like Mukabalim. They understood something.
If you want to go, Captain America, and whatever that guy's name is in the first Captain America, the first Avenger, you know the. Come on, man.
I don't remember. Dude. I'm not one of these like Marvel geeks.
Dude, the guy with the red.
This is children's comics.
Yeah, well, I marvel at that.
Oh my God.
Here.
People are so obsessed with this. I don't know. I just can't get into the whole...
Captain America. First Avenger.
I understand that there are, like, I guess, Torah messages in all those movies and messages and moral messages and blah, blah, blah.
No, you're not getting it.
I'm getting it. It's just...
Who's the bad guy?
People are really taking a lot of this very seriously, just like the Star Wars people. Way seriously. To the point of like...
I'm talking about this guy. Red Skull.
Oh, this clown. Okay.
Yeah, this guy. The whole idea about that was that there was an entire division of the Nazis that was looking for the occult, and this division is called Hydra.
It's true.
And whatever. Okay, fine. It's really cute.
There's a whole History Channel thing about this.
Look, it's really cute.
They travel
to
Iran. That's how they call Aryan and this and that. It's a whole thing.
They also do that with what's it called? They do that with not Captain America. The one that just flopped.
Hellboy?
Right now. Did it. Yes, Hellboy.
Yeah. So but I think it's if you see the way that Hitler did everything, the way the whole like how he hypnotized everybody, it was just. He was tapped into something. He was tapped into some kind of power.
Yeah, but I don't know if he was actually sitting there reading charts.
No, not reading charts.
It was just very real.
And he understood something. He understood something about it.
Anyway, so that's in a nutshell. That's anti-Semitism. And what's curious is that when Avraham Avinu, was told to circumcise, the Midrash says that he had a huge problem with that because he's saying if I'm supposed to be the father of many nations and I look different than everyone, that's not really going to help with the popularity.
No.
Right? I mean, I should. If it doesn't, the God's saying that's why I'm making a covenant with you because you actually need to be different. You can't be the same and lead.
There's still people who want to ban circumcision.
Yeah, but that's for humanitarian whatever.
No, whatever it is. Yeah, whatever the reasons are, at least. Yeah.
Yeah, and thank you for that interesting point.
What is it?
Well, that is GDR007. It's acknowledging that's an interesting point.
In Russian, GDR is like the German, it's like East Germany, Geder. There was FRG and Geder. West Germany, East Germany. Anyway.
Well, that's why there was a Geder in between.
Exactly.
There was a wall, a border.
Exactly.
Mr. Gorbachev, take down that wall.
Incredible, man.
Right?
Incredible.
So anyway... That was anti-Semitism, and I think that pretty much sums it up. So we need to be just aware that that's what's going on, and not to, as always, as I don't remember exactly who said this, Chaim Volozhin, who said it maybe. When the Jews don't do Kiddush, then the world does Havdalah.
Yes.
Right? When we don't sanctify ourselves, then they will separate
us.
Or
as I said in my video at the end, I said, if you don't remember you're Jewish, anti-Semitism is going to remind you.
Yeah.
Very simple.
Yeah, okay.
They're doing
so that was our first topic. Our second topic for today is the Holocaust.
Yeah.
And specifically, it's all related, obviously. Yeah. They're tied in. Yeah. So it's Holocaust Memorial Day, and I got to say that I'm a grandson of a Holocaust, a child survivor. What child survivor means is that as a child, he was able to escape the Holocaust. In other words, he didn't experience the death camps. He didn't experience the...
Where was he during this whole time?
What he experienced was... Nuremberg, the Kristallnacht, and then finally being put on a train, separated from his parents, and put in an orphanage in France, and through Portugal came to the States.
Can you imagine being like this mamish? You knowing your parents are going there, and you're going...
Well, when he was 6 years old, he thought it was a...
like temporary thing.
Yeah, it was temporary. Who's that? What is he saying?
He's saying, still, you're separate.
It's Gabriel Regis. Oh, Gabe.
Oh, Gabe Bridget.
Gabe. Oh, how's it going, Gabe?
Hey, what's going on?
Yeah, I've known you as Gabe. Good to hear you, man.
Last time I saw Gabe, I saw him in the...
The Chashabat 500?
No.
That was the first time I saw him.
No, the burger joint. Speaking of burgers, I'm eating burger now. I saw him in the burger
You're
joint.
Burging out on us.
In the city. What's that?
Burger County?
The place by NYU. I forgot the name of it. Whatever. So,
whatever, man. Anyway. So the Holocaust, and so I never quite connected with all this scare Holocaust stuff. You know, to me it was just part of who I was. I don't need to go to Poland to be
Auschwitz. And
yeah, and I'm telling you, like
I heard from a lot of people they turned Auschwitz, that location used to be in terms of when they used to show it to people, you know, in the 80s or in the 70s. What it is now they literally turned it into like a kind of like a
attraction.
Disney. Yeah, it's almost like a Disney-fied Lahavdil version of.
Yeah,
something.
it's what my one of my close. I'm not going to say who he was. He's a rabbi. He said when he was preparing a trip for Auschwitz, he said, what you have to remember when you walk through here is that this entire thing is a fake. Because what you're not remembering is that there were thousands of people here standing in line for the 2 toilets that work in this place with stomach problems, and you just can imagine how the place smelled. Yeah. Right? So like the whole thing is fake. Yeah. And it doesn't
not to say the Holocaust never happened.
Right, but the point is the point is that putting people into that experience of the difficulties and the hardship of the Holocaust, which are really hard to imagine, doesn't really seem to be as so potent anymore. In other words, people are like, okay, fine, I get it, and you can cry, but like, it's been overused
because there's nothing experiential at this point now.
It's more like if you don't stick together, this is what can happen to you. This is what has happened.
You know what really creeped me out
what?
Though was when yesterday the girl who made the
Instagram
thing. If a girl in the Holocaust
were
on
you
Instagram.
Following that? I wasn't following.
I was following the whole thing.
No,
not following. I watched the story because it was. It's the stories and she saved them. Mm-hmm. It's crazy. It makes you feel like you're it's like you're watching something in HD. And it's not like you're watching black and white old film of people walking around some European city.
I would commend whoever started that initiative.
It's Israelis, yeah.
I know.
Israeli girl.
I would commend that initiative in the sense that it's trying to speak the language that the young generation speaks. Yeah. That I can understand. Mm-hmm. But what is the value that is being transmitted?
I think the value is that it makes it real for today. It makes it a thing where like it's something like people still think, especially in America, that something like this cannot happen to them, and it can. If they're not careful, it can very easily. Just like back then, they had people had their businesses and they had their gashmias and they had their houses and nobody wanted to leave and people were.
That's like, the article you posted today.
Yeah, like people were coming to them, canaries in the coal mine, and saying, "Come on, we gotta go to Israel, go to America, we have to leave, we have to go, evacuate." Like, come on, what are you talking about? And this and that. This guy's a madman. He's a fringe, whatever. In the late 20s, they were like, okay, this guy's a fringe. Let him yak. Mm-hmm. All these rabbis even were telling people, no, we're staying put. We're not going anywhere. This is, what is this Zionism stuff? We're not going to Israel. We're not leaving. We're not going to America. And then afterwards, all those rabbis ended up in America and in Meir Sharman and Israel. Well, like the Klausenberger Rebbe who came, I think it was he's the one that
Kalev.
No, not the Kalev. The one that founded the hospital, Kiryat Sons.
Oh! I thought the one who passed away.
No. The one that lost his whole family in the Holocaust, and then he survived, and he came and he had 12 children. It could be either Klausenberg or the son, Kiryat Sons.
That would be Tzans.
Yeah, Tzans. Like he found there's a hospital next to Netanya. It helps a lot of people. So like,
there's a neighborhood called Kiryat Sons.
Yeah. So like, it makes it real. And there's a lot of people, especially now. It's like you come to people. It's like, oh, let's make Aliyah because stuff's getting hairy. Here and in Europe. Like, what are you talking about? We have this, we have that. Like, people are comfortably numb.
Comfortably numb.
Like the song.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's important. That is an important value that people recognize. How all of what appears to be civil behavior is a thin veneer. Yeah. You can go away really quickly.
The Germans were very
the height of civilization.
People. Yeah.
Height of civilization.
Like,
I mean, look at Europe now. Europe it's being exposed as being just a thin veneer. Yeah. Right? And so that's Holocaust. And I just figured that this ties us into our third subject, which is they're really two in one, is the failures of Jewish education. Mm-hmm. And so I want to turn your attention to an article. My brother actually wrote this a year ago, but he also redid it. And the first article is called Stop the Holocaust-Based Identity. That's my brother Yaakov Selavan, who's also the founder of Slingshot Israel, which is an educational, entrepreneurial site, endeavor, and company in the Golan Heights. And today he rewrote it as follows: between Gaza and the gas chambers. And there he is as a commander of the IDF in Auschwitz, holding a Sefer Torah. So it was a very powerful experience for him, but not for the reasons you would think. So I actually start the year in my Jewish history, modern Jewish history class, having my students read this article. And so my brother opens this up as follows. I'll read just some highlights from here. This was written in April 12, 2018. The title is Stop Holocaust-Based Identity. As a grandson of a survivor and an IDF captain, I find banal ceremonies and never again declarations ineffective. After leading an IDF march into Auschwitz-Birkenau, I understood the magnitude of our educational failure. The last day of our IDF Witness in Uniform delegation to Poland was the mission highlight, entering Auschwitz-Birkenau, the biggest and most terrifying death camp. For me, out of 9.5 years in the army, including battle under fire, nothing can compare to that moment. I march into Auschwitz II, Birkenau. On my left shoulder is the flag of the Jewish state, and in my right hand I hold a Torah scroll, our eternal legacy. In my left hand I hold pictures of my brave great-grandmother, Mathilda Auerbach Hirsch, and her youngest children, 5-year-old Samuel and 4-year-old Shoshana Rosalie, which is my mother's namesake, all murdered right here, over 70 years ago. Surrounded by my heritage, our heritage, my responsibility as a combat officer, and our fate and destiny, I led 160 officers, the next generation of Israel's commanders. Unforgettable. This result seemingly contradicts the headline, but that's the point. This was one of the very few moments I bonded with the mission. As we landed in Poland, I immediately recognized that I was unenthusiastic, and by the end of the day, I realized why. Quote, in Poland, I feel Jewish. I can't explain it. I feel more Jewish. Only here do I put on tefillin, unquote, end quote. The opening of our first day debriefing by our lieutenant colonel, a dedicated and devoted commander. This was the atmosphere of the entire trip. Poland defines our identity. Our whole purpose, the essence of our existence and our military service is never again.
So my question is always like this. I always wonder when they take soldiers who are of Sephardic background to these things, how do they feel?
It's interesting that you say that because I teach at a Sephardic school.
Yeah.
And I
Syrian, specifically Syrian.
Yeah. And I feel that these students are much more open to it because it's different to them. Yeah, they didn't grow up hearing about it.
But they have, their grandparents experience their own thing with, I'm saying, in the countries with the Arabs.
But it's not the same thing, right? I understand. They've been through what they've been through, but it's not the same thing. And so I find that they're much more interested and open to hearing about it because they don't naturally know about it. Yeah. Now I'll just continue a few more lines. The Israeli education system and the IDF failed to build a strong and proud Jewish identity among teenagers. That failure affects their motivation as young adults to serve our people and country in significant roles, especially enlisting for combat. Israel's official remedy for treating this failure has become Poland and the Holocaust. I witnessed this personally. Dozens of soldiers under my command singled out their high school visit to Poland as the key reason for drafting to combat service. My friend recalled that when he was debating if to extend his service as commander, his commander sent him to Poland as a result. As he was landing back in Israel, this colonel called when he was coming into the office to commit for more years. So, if Poland is the cure for this educational failure, I don't want any part of it. We need to find better ways to justify our existence here and to strengthen our sense of mission in the IDF. It is impossible to base our entire moral infrastructure on one event or epoch, as tragic as it is. And so he goes on. And this is a beautiful picture, by the way, where you see him standing next to a Holocaust survivor in Auschwitz.
Let me see.
I'll show you in a second. I just want our viewers to see it. That's him. That's him. And that was a Sefer Torah, by the way, which was dedicated to Ilan Ramon, the astronaut.
Yeah.
And so here am I, guiding a tour in the Metropolitan Museum to a bunch of Russian unaffiliated Jews, 4 families with about 2 kids each, and at the end of the tour, one of the fathers comes to me and he says, our community has zero understanding of the Jewish holidays. We want you to do some sort of holiday program for us. We'll cook and come to your house for Shabbat. We'll do whatever. Everybody here, they don't know anything, and then they're intermarrying. And
this is a guy who ate shrimp on Pesach.
Well, that was his friend.
No, it's funny. Yeah.
That wasn't him. That was his friend.
Oh,
that doesn't matter. The point is that this really matters. And he said, like, then they just intermarry, and they don't really realize what it's about, and so on. Right? And then I realized that the museum is an incredible, it's the best classroom. It's an incredible platform for conveying deep values as long as you're doing it in a way that's methodical and authentic, right? So that was an amazing realization. And I'm realizing, I was having this conversation with my professor in Yeshiva University, Stephen Fine. And he said to me that when he was a kid in California, all these hour-long footage videos from the Nazis of bodies being rolled into mass burial graves, like that was all coming out. And you're watching these videos, not the snippets they show you today. You're watching the full videos with the Holocaust survivor telling you about it. That's what he grew up with. And I was having this conversation with him about, like, what are we doing in Jewish education? Like, why is it all about the Holocaust? And he said, it's really hard to get something that Reform and Conservative and Orthodox and Hasidic and Israeli and American can all agree on. But they can definitely all agree, never again.
Yeah.
Right? So it's finding the lowest common denominator to bring people together. And I said, like, isn't there someone, this is a conversation we've been having when you spoke about Kiruv ruin your life, right? Someone out there in the ether putting out valuable, authentic, engaging, like, where is it happening? Why don't I know about it?
It is happening.
Where?
It's happening with our friend Daniel Katz, who's doing...
One person.
That's not one person, I'm just giving you examples. That's one example. He's tapping into the whole movement of, right now, the mindfulness, so he's attaching... all the what he calls Hasidic masters and Kabbalistic teachings.
Good.
And meditation.
I follow him on Facebook.
Attaching that. He has a whole course about it. The Elevation whole seminar of like 3 days retreat and this and that. So he's trying to do that and attach it to the new movement because it's all coming together. Actually, it's appropriate that all this stuff is happening now in the world with the whole mindfulness because it's not an accident. Because people are coming to spirituality. No, I'm saying, but people are coming to spirituality because they see that
he just says that in terms of weed.
Well, I'm saying people are seeing like materialism and all this Gashmia stuff is not the end all be all of life.
Right. People are realizing,
and just like are gravitating, and especially Jews who are secular. So now you can tap into those guys.
Right.
You can speak their language.
That means that this famous story about the 2 shoemakers or sellers, whatever, businessmen who came to Africa to sell shoes. The first guy goes, there's 1 billion people here, but they don't even wear shoes. And the other guy goes like, what an amazing market. There's 1 billion people who still don't wear shoes.
Exactly.
Right? It's just a matter of perspective. And so I was speaking to Stephen Fine, and he said, he was quoting some colleague of his who said, who is the they who are putting out Jewish education? If you were to take all of these educators, right, and put them all in one room, you might fill up a hall, like of 3,000 people.
Yeah.
That's it. There is no they. There is us. It's scary and it's empowering at the same time. Because that means there's people of vision out there are saying, like, there's no one who's going to do this. Now, I'm in the museum. My brother is in the Golan Heights. You are doing wine. Right? There's people who care.
Where there are no men. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. But Makom Shen Ish Ishtadel Yot Ish, right? As the Mishnah says, when there's nobody to do it, you do the job. And so there's us in these unique positions saying we're frustrated with what we're being given. We're going to make a difference. But then we have this self-doubt of saying, like, what if I don't know enough? Or like that. Okay, so all this defeatist mentality. Yeah. But we need to understand.
We know what we know. And that's enough.
And we know that ain't it.
That ain't it, but
so we have to draw that to channel that into what people are listening to and are engaged and are tuned to. Whether, like what they did now with Instagram, imagine you can do that the life of Rosh Bar Yochai.
Wow.
right? Or
do you know how many times, anytime I hear about all these stories, Shimon Bar Yochai, Rabbi Akiva, this, I always create movies in my head about this stuff.
so
And then I
maybe
wonder,
you can make
how
it.
come movies were not made about these incredible stories, about these incredible
But often they
Jewish
are.
art.
But when they are, they're
Corny.
very
They're
exact.
made by Christians and they're very corny.
Yes,
And they're very like Lifetime television for idiots.
right. You
As
don't
they say,
have
Family Guy.
to compare. If we're just speaking about like
Yeah.
in the aftermath of the destruction of the Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
They aren't Notre Dame.
Yeah.
What they are is that cheap, like, oh, you poke the thing and the Jesus tears come out of his eyes and it goes, la, 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 la. Right? It's like, it's those, it's corny.
Yeah,
it's corny.
Even those movies, I was watching. I searched for a movie about Jacob and Asaph on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit. It's a little better than corny. I sat through it. I'm just like,
It's still
who are these actors? I'm just like,
I've seen, I'm telling you. And so, speaking of Shimon Bar Yochai, by the way, I'm actually writing a book report for Images Magazine, and this is the first draft.
Wow.
But listen to this. It's just because you spoke about Shimon Bar Yochai.
No.
In the shadow of the Romans lived the great Kabbalist, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, somewhere in the Lower Galilee. His various activities, his legendary flight, and his miraculous existence are recorded in the Talmud, but his neighborhood is recorded in stone. On a steep slope below the cliffs of Mount Nitai in the Lower Galilee sits Khirbet Vadi Hamam, a Roman period village in his very neighborhood. Its identification may be slightly obscure, but its material culture is now laid out before us in Uzi Liebner's 2018 Kedem report. It's cute. I used the Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai thing there. He mentions it.
Did you say Mount Nitai? That's the
Yes.
name that Netanyahu used when he was in America. He changed it to Nitai.
I know.
I find that very, very interesting.
Yeah, well, he did say he's going to name a gate on the Golan after Trump. Givat Trump.
Well, do we have anything named Cyrus?
It's going to be huge.
Do we have anything named after Cyrus?
Koresh? Yes, there's a street called Koresh. It's right outside Mamilla.
Yeah, you can go buy cigars over there.
Yeah, Koresh Street. I used to work there. Mayor Cohen cigar store. My friend used to work there. I was like, spend time there. You know Mayor Cohen? Yoram Cohen used to buy his cigar stuff there.
Yoram Cohen, the Tanya winery guy. Oh, okay.
That was his store.
I don't know. Okay. Oh, there's wine there as well, no?
Yes.
Ah, okay.
And alcohol.
So I think Gad Shomron, our friend Lior from Gad Shomron, he got his wines into there, and he got his wines into the Waldorf Astoria now that they built.
Yeah. So just to sum up, going from anti-Semitism to Holocaust to the failures of Jewish education, the failures of Jewish education in this respect is that we need to provide value and content which is engaging, which is relevant, which is meaningful, which will keep people involved and caring, as opposed to scaring them.
Do you know what?
Right.
What? Speaking of scaring, you know what scared me when I read the 2013 Pew report and the main question?
Oh my gosh!
How do you identify
gosh.
Jewish identity? The number one answer was remember the Holocaust. Number two was humor, like whatever. Number three was like cuisine or something. All right,
soup.
One of the, yeah, exactly. Our friend
Holocaust soup.
Our friend Shlomo.
Yeah. Okay, so that was pretty much a very powerful journey. I mean, it's so relevant, it's so current, and it just brings out more than ever everything that's going on now, and the fact that we need to address fundamental issues in the world and to stand up for what our real values are instead of saying like, genocide happened, let's make sure it doesn't happen again. Instead, like, let's make Jews
let's
actually
all band together about genocide.
I mean, let's actually band together about something meaningful.
Yeah, like Torah, but in a
revamped
way.
Yeah, in a way that's like, this is what brings us together. You know, it's interesting that Dudu Topaz, who's basically the Israeli Saturday Night Live, he had that famous piece where he impersonates Moshe Rabbeinu, and he walks up and he's talking about a secular guy. You know, like the thing could have even been printed on, like, filmed on Shabbat or something. Who knows? And he walks in and he says to the people, "But if you're here after 4,000 years as a nation, there must be something in you.
Yeah.
So start believing in yourselves."
He actually was serious about it?
He said that, yeah.
It's kind of like when, that famous story, we don't know if it's true, but Napoleon, he came to Jerusalem. And he
said, I think it's a myth.
It's a myth, but it's a cute story. It's like, if these people are crying about...
But they don't say, as they said about to the judge, they don't say the stories about you.
About you, that's Rabbi Beryl Wine. He's like, they don't tell those stories about you or me, which I guess he got more time.
And if the story is not true, then it should be true. That's the second part of it.
Right. Okay.
So,
Yeah.
can I backtrack for like a
Of
second?
course.
I wanted to ask
Wrapping
you
up,
about
yeah.
this whole Esav and Yaakov thing, with
Sure.
with relation to what's happening even today.
Esav, son of
Esav
Yaakov.
and Yaakov, but also Ishmael. How does that?
This is dude. This
It's
is
a
a
separate
whole
thing. It's a separate
yeah.
thing.
I think that's
Okay,
a whole
fine.
topic.
It's
Let's
a
just
whole
say
thing. Fine.
for now, we'll enjoy the wine. L'chaim. That's 13th night of the Omer. Yesod shebegvura. Yesod has to do with being a conduit of openness and a relationship and transmitting and vulnerability. And so, on that note, I think wine. We've been very vulnerable here, and talking about asserting values, which is really what Gevura is about. And so, have a happy Yesod Shebegvura, 13th night of the Omer, everybody, L'chaim, and we'll see you on next tasting in Torah.
13 is a Shem. Important.
Yes, unlike some buildings where they don't have the 13th floor.
Oh my goodness.
All right, here we go.
L'chaim.
L'chaim.
Shabbos.